There is one last mod I would like to show you with regards to this fan. Notice how when I remove the panel, the fan turns itself off and is not tethered to the case. This is quite handy if you access the inside of your case frequently. Here's how I did it. I anchored the female connector to the panel and its male counterpart to the chassis. This is fairly simple to do, but there are a few factors to consider. First, Molex connectors generally have a pretty strong fit. Too strong, in fact, for this application. To ease the fit, you'll need to cut away the ridges inside the female socket that clip into the divots on the male connector. Uneven pins will also cause problems. Another option is to swap the plastic connectors and socket parts with ones that fit easily without alterations. Secondly, Molex connectors are made of either nylon or polypropylene. No glue will stick to that. So whatever anchoring means you choose, it has to be mechanical. For this task, I chose epoxy putty. Essentially what you do here is trap each of the connectors into their own separate blobs of putty, taking care to leave the connecting ends bare, of course. I started by pressing a block of netted putty on the panel. With both male and female ends joined together, I pressed the female part neatly into the putty and then pushed as much of the putty over the connector to trap it in. I picked this spot on the panel because it didn't interfere with anything and also lined up with an ideal spot on the chassis to attach the male connector. Working quickly, I immediately put the panel back in place and secured it with the rear thumb screws. Prior to this, I removed the side fan grille and vacated the top drive base to allow me to access the inside while the side panel was in place. Now through these openings, I proceeded to straighten the Molex assembly, tidy up the putty, and ensure that it didn't migrate onto the male connector. Once the putty was cured, I removed the panel and mixed another batch of putty which I pressed over the exposed side of the male connector. I modeled the putty in such a way to trap in the male end while staying clear of the side panel surface as well as the female end. Once again, I immediately replaced the panel into place and secured it with the thumb screws. It's important to build up enough of the putty so that when you close the panel, the putty will get pressed against the chassis and some of it will squeeze through the unused screw holes along the side of the drive bays. Now working through the vacant drive bay at the front, I press the putty that squeezed through so that when it's cured, it will be locked in place. Although there is little room to work, you have to ensure that the fresh putty doesn't merge with the hardened putty on the female end and that the Molex assembly is parallel to the removal of the panel. Again, the placement of the Molex assembly is critical. You want to be sure that neither the putty nor the Molexes interfere with putting back any of your drive bay devices. At this point, you want to allow the putty to fully cure before attempting to remove the panel. In the event that one of your putty constructions fails to bond properly and pops off, you can use epoxy glue for steel to reattach it. Simply outline the position of the putty, scuff the metal surface, apply the glue, and place the putty/Molex back at the same spot. Wait till the glue gets very tacky before replacing the panel, after which point you may need to do some adjustments before the glue hardens. Once satisfied, allow the glue to cure for at least an hour before testing. As the making of this video, I performed this mod on 3 different cases and only once have I had to resort to using glue. And there you have it, folks. No more annoying wire tethering your panel to your case. On an aesthetic standpoint, sure, it won't win any awards, but the trade-off, in my opinion, is well worth it. And besides, unless you really look for it, it's quite invisible. The next mod takes us inside. My version of the X-Blade had the drive cage originally located right here. This takes up valuable space for a water pump, and the side of the cage outlined here disrupts the air intake drastically. In my opinion, this is one of the biggest flaws of this case. If I was to hang on to it for another build, I would have to remedy that. Because only the top 3 5 1/4 drive bays would be populated, I opted to relocate the drive cage up here on this platform where the floppy drive bay initially resided. Because I had no floppy drive, who still does really, I didn't hesitate to give it the boot. The hard drive cage is removable, which made its relocation easier. You simply remove the thumb screw at its base, press on the tab at the top, and it slides right out. But it was a bit too high to fit up there with the top 3 drive bays occupied, so I shortened it by about ½ an inch. I accomplished this by cutting the top off, removing the excess on both sides, and then riveting the top back on. I also cut off the screw bracket and the metal tab. Another adjustment I had to make on the newly repositioned drive cage was remove an inch off the front top to provide clearance for the back of the fan controller unit. The cage sits right here on this platform and is secured with 4 screws and wing nuts on the underside as shown here. Only one is visible because I later found that 1 screw at the front right corner is sufficient, so I removed the other ones. This allows me to swivel the drive cage if I need to service any of the hard drives. To complete this mod, I removed the base of the drive cage outlined here. This was easily done by drilling out a few rivets and off it went. Now I've got room to put my pump and I've improved the air intake. Booyah! Shortening the drive cage, as I've done here, resulted in losing 1 slot, but 3 hard drives really is all I need. 2 for my RAID array and 1 for my backup. Last but not least, in order to further enhance air circulation throughout the case, I've cut away the perforated aluminum of the chassis that covers the front and rear fans as shown here. This simple mod significantly improves the fan's performance by decreasing the air resistance caused by obstructions such as the stock perforated aluminum. And to avoid damage or injuries from the rear fan, I've installed this grille and rubber trim over the edge of the cutaway. This concludes this mod video on airflow improvement of the X-Blade case. Tune in for the next segment in which I'll show you in detail how I've custom installed a Coolance flow meter at the front of the X-Blade case. Feel free to post your comments and questions for this video. I thank you for watching and see you next time.